Hello, everyone. This is another Freedom to Feel conversation, and my guest today is Bernadette Wood. She is a therapist who has been a social worker for 27 years and have worked in the field of social services for over 31 years. That's a long time. So, your full bio will be at the end of the video so everyone can
Okay,
see the full picture
perfect.
of you. But for now, this is my brief introduction, but my main opening question is that one that I mentioned off record. Who
hmm
is Bernadette as of now?
I think I'm a lot of things just like everybody else is. I think I'm first off a mom, and then I'm an author, I'm a social worker, and now I'm a therapist. I think one of the great things about the human experience is we can do a lot of very different things with our lives. We're
Mhm,
not held to one
mhm.
thing, and I think the
Yeah,
more open we are to the things that we might try, the
yeah.
better it is for us and for
Mhm,
everybody else.
mm.
I have 31 years experience total being a social worker. But in that, I have a lot of experience with trauma victims, about 27 years worth of trauma victim experience, just being hands on and one on one and sitting by kids' bedsides and walking them through some of the worst moments of their lives. I think that's what actually helped me get ready for the role I play now as a therapist.
Mm.
So, the
Wow.
last couple of years of being a therapist, most of my victims have trauma, and it's been great to watch them come out of that.
Yes. How wonderful to hear.
Thank you.
That's the beautiful news about healing, right? Once
Yes,
you get it
absolutely.
on the path.
Absolutely.
So, what inspired you to become a social worker and then a therapist?
My own background, I went through trauma as a child, and I think when you recover through trauma, sometimes one of the things you realize is that you can understand where people are coming from in those moments,
Mm,
more so than someone who hasn't been through that. And
right.
it can actually help a lot in that moment if you can actually feel and understand the things that they're going through. And it helps you connect much deeper with them. On any case, any level parent, it didn't matter from wealthy to poor,
Yeah.
right? Any child from any background, they got the same treatment, and I connected with them on the same level because that's what this is about.
Wow. Connection, isn't it, Bernadette?
Yes, absolutely.
I absolutely agree. We talked briefly off record about self love and the importance of that self acceptance,
hmm
self love.
hmm
And I just now remember you saying, trying to see, sometimes we try to treat others better than we treat ourselves. That
Yeah,
was my case too.
absolutely. So one of the things I find right with trauma victims is they become something called highly sensitive persons.
Yeah.
And so one of the stuff, the literature coming out more recently has been that there's a piece in the brain where that occurs. So we become highly empathetic, highly intuitive, which is great, but it also comes with some really heavy things, right? Like how deeply we feel feelings, right? The fact that we can pick up the feelings and emotions of others around us, and we have to be careful that our own trauma, our own pain doesn't get in the way of reading
Mm,
that correctly.
mm,
Right? And so
yeah.
that is one of the things that
Yeah.
reason self-love is so important because we often see ourselves as sensitive. And it's often seen in a negative light, not in the positive light it should be seen in. Right? And once we learn to love ourselves for everything from our sensitivities, right, to all the beautiful things that we can bring to this world. Once we love ourselves truly deeply, nothing can really harm you. It's amazing. It really is, you know?
Yeah, it is. It has been my path, the very beginning
Yeah.
of my healing journey. Yes,
Yeah.
self-acceptance, self-forgiveness, and
Yep.
self-love, right?
All of it, right?
Would you say that self-love is let's say, is a practice for life?
Absolutely. I think everything we do is a practice for life, right? I don't think we're ever actually done working on ourselves till the day we take our
Mm,
last breath. Like I tell my clients, some days you're going to knock it out of the park. It's going to be a great day. You're going to do so much right. Self-care, you're going to take care of yourself well, you're going to feed yourself well, sleep well, everything. Other days, you're not going to do so great. But the rule is just get up every day and try.
yeah,
Every day is worth trying for you.
that's true. That's a beautiful message, though. One that I had to grapple with. I had to try to understand that what is doing the work, because my path is spirituality, so
hmm
I have been as far as I could go as of now.
Right.
So I see that there is pure consciousness, uh,
hmm
the observer, which
Right.
is, it's called pure consciousness. I don't know if this is how I see it. I usually
Mhm,
don't say the word observer, but I know it's used that way. Even therapy is used
mhm.
that way.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I like to think that what is doing the work of self
mhm,
acceptance, self love is the body mind complex. It's
yeah,
not really consciousness because that's pure.
yeah,
That doesn't have
right.
any traits or qualities in it.
That you're correct. No, and that's what you're correct. Because what I tell clients is a lot of this work is actually bringing the body and the mind back together, because what I find with trauma victims is those pieces get disconnected. So your
Right,
mind can see something,
right,
it can see bad behaviors you're committing, it can see the bad things you're doing for yourself, right? But
right,
your body will continue to crave that bad stuff because that's the easy stuff. That's what you're comfortable with. You learned how to cope in a
right.
really bad way to difficult stuff as a kid, right? And you're fighting that, right? That connection. And once you can get those two pieces back together, I
Mm,
see some of the most amazing healing. I tell my clients,
yeah,
it's not me doing the work, right? It's them doing the work. I'm just the guide. I just try to guide us the way I think I can guide us, and it helps them the best to heal for their traumas, right? And start to see if they are highly sensitive, what those traits look like, and how to manage those, right? Everything else is on them just to love themselves, and they're the ones doing the work. We're just the guides. Right?
yeah. That's exactly it. So basically, it's getting to the fundamental truth that we already loved, that we are
Mhm.
love,
Yeah.
essentially, and
Yep.
bringing that flavor into the body mind so they can align and all the three pieces, which in the end is just one anyway, one
Yeah.
reality, not two.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
yeah, how wonderful. Do you actually teach these spiritual truth to your clients? Do you to have this kind of a conversation? Are you open to them? Are they open? Are your clients open to spirituality?
I do have this conversation with them, so I find that not everybody, right, is open
Yeah.
to do the work we need
Yeah.
to do. Because often what I describe to clients, here's how, I kind of work with clients with the trauma victims only. And about what I get is about 90% of trauma victims. So what I tell them is I often get people that have had some kind of chaos or trauma. Usually it's in their childhood, sometimes it's all the way through to adulthood, sometimes it's one or the other, right? And that chaos or trauma has caused the fight, flight, fawn, freeze, right? And walking on eggshells feeling with someone usually in that household, right? And we have what I call our pain or trauma bucket, like right here in our chest. So when we're little and we don't have the capacity to actually work through the things that happen to us or happen in front of us, we kind of write those memories on a piece of paper and stuff them in that bucket, right? The
Yeah.
more painful, the more traumatic, the deeper they go in the bucket. The less traumatic are right here. And those are the things that start to spill out in bad coping skills, bad behaviors. And I think as we get older and are more capable, right, to actually process them, the body and the mind start to realize it's time to reconnect. And
Mm,
we need to do the work. It's a scream, right, of our body and our mind.
yeah.
Sometimes people feel so drawn to therapy to fix that behavior because their body's telling them it's time to, their mind is telling them it's time to. And that's what's important, is listening to yourself a lot, right?
Yeah. So would you say that there's timing for healing? Is that what you're implying?
Yeah, absolutely. I even tell people to schedule healing time. I get people that will skip
Yeah.
their healing time, and I'm like, rather than spend 6 hours, right, cleaning your house, spend 4 hours cleaning your house and spend 2 hours taking care of yourself, right? Because actually, when you pass, do you want people to sit up on a stage and say that you were such a great house cleaner, or do you want them to say that you were such an amazing person to connect,
Mm. I love
right?
that.
Yeah,
That's
would be so nice, right?
yes, huh.
Yeah,
I love starting with the end. You see, that's to me has had a very, very profound impact. Just
yeah,
thinking about what if this moment's my last moment here? How,
right, right.
right, the last breath that I'm taking. What words
Hmm.
would come out of the,
Right,
of this body mind expression? So
right.
yes, I love that. That's a
Yeah.
beautiful contemplation. If we all could do that, I know that's why I asked about timing. It seems like not everyone is ready
Mhm.
to embark right on the healing journey because it's not easy.
Absolutely not. And it's not gonna feel good at first, right? What people
Yes,
tell me is when they sit, I actually give people journal entries, so I give them questions
yeah,
because a lot of my victims are CPTSD victims, right? Childhood post-traumatic stress disorder victims as adults. And that is a difficult thing, just sending someone off and saying, "Write about your history." That's awful to do to anybody first off, right, in therapy.
yeah,
So I usually of them questions. They're very simple questions, but it can be very difficult for some people to answer. What was it like when you were a child, right? What was it like in middle school? And I've actually had people who have said nothing happened when we've spoken, but after they come to read their journal entry, they will sit there and read stuff and be shocked at what they wrote and sit and say, oh my gosh, now I remember all this stuff, but I didn't see it when I read it. I didn't see it when I wrote it. And it's like, that's because the brain does so much to prevent us, right, from connecting those pieces sometimes. It's trying to protect us. So sometimes we're fighting ourselves, right? And
Yes.
that's why I tell my clients, it should feel uncomfortable. It should feel a little messy when you start therapy. What comes on the other side is amazing. So it's worth this, right? But that's where people sometimes get too uncomfortable and they pull the plug or they start reverting back, right? Because it's more comfortable to revert back. Sometimes you got to fight the hard fight, right? To get
Mm,
to that good place.
yeah. I gotta love your wisdom. What's not to love
Thank
about
you.
it? Thank you. Thank you. So the topics that I have here to explore today is one
Mhm,
that you already mentioned, HSP, highly sensitive
mhm.
person, grounding, gardening,
Yep,
and the experiments of Matsuru Emoto with emotional imprinting of water.
yep.
So you mentioned highly sensitive people, person. The question that came to me was, do we get traumatized because we are actually highly sensitive from the get-go, or because I think you mentioned that we become highly sensitive people when we have been exposed to trauma, we've been traumatized, but it could that be the other way around too, Bernadette?
I absolutely think it's both. I
Yeah.
find, right, that there's traits that get passed on. Just watching families, all my years of experience as a CPS worker, I would hear families say, well, he looks just like him, he acts just like him, he walks just like so and so, right? Those things are often passed on, even people they don't meet, that they, right, never met, they would talk like or act like. And so
Yeah.
I believe that even highly sensitive persons' traits, say mom or dad, right, is also an HSP because that's what happened to them. And as we go back, usually each generation is a little worse, right? So you're the person that's usually trying to fix all this
Mm,
intergenerational trauma, which is amazing in of itself, right? And that's the piece, right? That's different. You're trying to stop that messaging, right?
right.
And everybody else has kept it going. So yes, I believe it passes on. I believe our sensitive traits are not only passed on, but if we're little kids and we're learning and watching the people in front of us, we're watching people be too sensitive. We're watching them be too forgiving and allow people to run over boundaries, right? So I
Yeah.
think sometimes we're also learning. I think it's all three. I think it's passed genetically. I think we learn it. And I think if we have our own traumas in our own familial home, right, or some kind of chaos, it can actually create some of that. So I think some people can be extremely highly sensitive, right? And it's not a bad thing, right? You're very intuitive, you're very empathetic. Like I tell my clients, when we're heightened, we can be like a tuning fork that's on fire out in the sun. And we have to be really cautious with how we wield that, right? Because we can read people as hating us. Nobody likes us in the room. And actually, it's our own stuff because we feel
Mm,
heightened for some reason.
mm,
And we've walked into that room, right? And we're having our own problems with our own messaging. And we
yeah.
don't realize it. So we have to be very clear, right? When we start to read things, where is this messaging coming from? And do I know, right? Is it coming from a trauma perspective? Is it coming from a highly sensitive person perspective? Because we treat those different,
Oh,
right?
wow. And how do we know the difference? Is that easy?
I think pain is actually how you find it, right? So
Yeah.
let's say, right, someone's trauma is that a person or a parent walked up really fast on them and screamed in their face. So people coming up close and fast at you would be a trauma trigger, right? But that
Yeah.
can also be an HSP trait, right? People being too close, that sensitivity to, right, closeness. So I think it's figuring out where it is happening, right? So let's say you're in an argument with someone and they come at you. I think that's a trauma trigger because it's going to bring up that pain and that memory of that trauma,
Mm,
right? The brain's going to start reading it wrong. And if you go, like, say, at a buffet line at a wedding and people get really close to you, it can bring those same feelings up, but you're not actually in a trauma situation. You are just being heightened because people are too close and it's your thing, part of your sensitivity. So often in those cases, what I do, a lot of it is just slowing the world down for us
yeah.
HSPs. We're smart people, but we try to move at a pace in this world that really isn't our pace. We need time to reflect on all the things we go through before we make a decision and before we speak. We don't speak off the cuff really well. I wish we did. We're good at listening, hearing, taking it in, and then using all of our parts, our
Mm,
spirituality, right?
mm,
Our empathy, our intuitiveness, right? And making sure all of that's healthy and then responding. But that's a slow pace. So I teach people just to slow down. If I'm at a buffet line and I get heightened, I get to the back of the line. The food's still going to be there. I don't need to get heightened. I can wait in the back of the line. And so it's reading if there's a pain, I think, often to it or a connection to that trauma. And it might take a minute for the brain to connect that for you. But once you know if there's a trauma or pain connection, then you need to journal out what happened, right? You need to figure out what connected. How did that connect? And that helps you release it, right? Way better than just talking about it. What I find is a lot of us are visual learners, and I find that those of us that write out stuff, it
Yeah.
almost feels like we're letting it go. It's much better, and it doesn't spiral as much, right? The audio learners do better with just talk therapy, I think, but visual learners, we gotta write it out. We make lists for a reason. We write a lot for a reason. It's actually one of those deeper, right, connections we've had to ourselves, this planet, and each other forever, right? Since cultures could write, they wrote.
Yeah, a billion times yes to
Yes,
everything you said. It is the work of, or let's say the expression of spiritual intelligence to me. That's
yes,
what it sounds
yep,
like, self-awareness, slowing down.
yeah,
Because in the end, that's what it is all about, isn't it? Peace. We're all looking to return to peace, return to love,
absolutely.
return to joy.
Yeah.
And by choosing peace, or in
Mhm.
choosing in a sense of making those decisions, in a sense
Yeah,
of working, listening, going deeper within, then it's that becomes possible. It's really possible. I don't know if we can
absolutely.
have that peace all the time, but it is possible.
We can't have it all the time because life happens, and let's face it, our world's much different than it
Yeah,
was generations ago, right? We have a world where we used to see it getting better each generation. I'm not sure it does so much anymore, right? And
yeah,
that's something we face, right? So the better our spirituality is for ourselves, whatever that looks like for someone, right? The better it is for this whole world, isn't it? Because we come from a peaceful place. And part of that is figuring out who are we really deeply? What
right.
things were learned, whether it's our moral compass, right? I find that some people have a moral compass based on what they were taught by their parents. And when you really start to talk to them, their own belief system is conflicting with that moral compass. So I hate to say it, once we become adults, we kind of need to wipe the slate clean and go, who am I and what do I actually believe? What do I think? What do I feel is right and just in this world? Not what did someone teach me? What did
Yeah,
I learn around me? What corners did someone cut in front of me so I should do that too? Right? But what really makes sense as a moralistic, right? Spiritualistic person for me.
yeah. It's almost like becoming a child again, right? Once
Yeah,
a child, and
absolutely.
then again a child to
Yes, absolutely.
to learn.
Right? Like we talked off air, right? Play is important even in an adult, right? We should
Right.
never stop playing. It should look different, but we should never stop dancing and running on the grass, right? And touching the flowers and eating the fruit right off the vine, right? That's what we were meant to do. We were always nomads, right? Now we do it when we go camping. And some of us don't even leave the, the luxuries behind when we go camping, right? We don't even get dirty going camping anymore. In fact, there's a study, I think it's like 2.5 years ago, that there's a bacteria they discovered in dirt. I don't remember quite the name, but there's a bacteria in dirt. If you type in hands, dirt, mental health, it
Yeah.
pops right up. And that bacteria touches our hands, our serotonin levels go up, just like we took an antidepressant by mouth. So getting dirty is kind of a good thing, the world's telling us, I believe, you know?
Yeah, that's one of the top grounding. One of the
Mm.
questions I had, which surprised me, I I'm very much into the earth and everything that's
Hmm.
natural, but I just recently we moved to it's in Florida. We just like the love the
Hmm.
beach, the sand, and just being in the
Yeah.
grass, the water. But then we have a dog, and I remember going around the development that we live,
Hmm.
and somebody said, "Oh, you cannot let him smell the grass or go too close because they just sprayed pesticides or
Oh,
chemicals to kill the insects." So
yeah.
now I was wondering, oh wow, so I can't, maybe I cannot do it myself either. Go
Right,
barefoot
right.
in the grass because it's all contaminated with these things. So is this something that only happens in big cities, Bernadette? Are you aware of that?
Yeah, I haven't heard of them doing that out in the forest, you know what I mean? And out on the natural paths. So I think if you have a concern about what they're spraying, which I wouldn't blame you for having, right? Either set up a way to kind of clean a little strip area for you. If you
Yeah.
can't do that, right, find a bigger place to do it in. They only suggest 3 times a week, 20 minutes each. That's really all you need. Grass, dirt, or sand, right? Moccasins or bare feet. It helps with inflammation in the body. It heals depression, where even places where antidepressants don't do so great, right?
Yeah.
And it just
Wow.
helps us overall feel better. I know that my natural melatonin kicks in better at night if I go through it. I can feel it.
Oh wow. So that's well, we have done, my husband and I, we do go to different places, but then I'm not sure. I can't really ask anyone if they have sprayed anything
Right,
there. But it
right,
feels like they did because I don't see the insects. When I don't
right.
see those, the mosquitoes, that's when I know,
Yeah,
this probably
absolutely.
is not safe, right, to walk
Yes,
around.
yes. So I would look at places like public parks too, right? They're going to be more apt to not use things that are going to cause any kind of harm to any kids or anything like that, right?
Right.
Your apartment
Yeah.
complex that thinks only the animals are walking on it, unfortunately, they should think about that, right? But
Yeah.
they might not think about that piece, right? They're only worried about liability, right? We live in a world of liability. In the parks, they're going to be very cautious as to public liability. So I think you
Yeah.
have a better shot, because they're being sprayed constantly with water, things like that. So I love big
Yes.
parks. I try to
Yeah.
find, I have a close trail. A lot of us have trails that are really close, right? And just getting out and walking is good. Even moccasins work. So you don't always have to be barefoot, right?
Right.
Moccasins work, and those are really nice to use too.
Yeah, so that's good to know. We do have a place here that's a beach that
Oh,
has a lot of
nice.
trails and then got the beach
Ah,
too. So
it's
that's,
beautiful.
yeah, I have to think about that more because, sometimes we look for convenience as well. We're
Yes,
busy people. We look
absolutely.
around. Maybe I can go here or just we can walk, do earthing
Absolutely.
here, grounding, but we have to
Yeah.
be
And I think
careful.
water, honestly, is a grounding one too, especially the ocean. If you think about it, when you were in utero, right, we're breathing, we're in water,
Yeah.
there's a sound around us that's full of water. If you've ever sat in front of the ocean, I've tried this, angry or sad, it never stays. I've never been able to stay angry or sad if I watch the waves
Mm,
even just a little bit. I think there's some kind of connection even to just watching the waves, right? Even if you can't get barefoot, just feeling that connection to the water again, because we lose that as well, other than baths and showers. And think about it, baths and showers, dips and pools, all of that, that's something we gravitate towards too. There's a reason. It's a full body grounding, right? If we do that right, right?
yeah. Yeah. It feels exactly like that.
Oh, amazing, right?
Yeah, it's almost like the expansion of the body mind because we
Yes,
are nature, aren't we? We are not apart
yes,
from nature. That's what we
not
are.
at all, not at
So
all.
it's almost going back to it somehow, but still
Absolutely.
separate, but one at the same time. I had a question for you, but yes, the one that I asked you off record about psychedelics. So
Mhm.
you have recently accepted into this certificate program to learn how to use psychedelics to treat trauma. So I would love to hear about the effectiveness of psychedelics when it comes to mental health.
They're showing that psychedelics are a great way to bridge a gap and open up some of the wounds, right, that otherwise the brain is protecting us from. One of the things we know is the brain protects us from stuff, even if it's good, right? You might have a good dream, but you start to get up and that dream starts to disappear faster than you can keep it in your memory. And that's because your brain is doing its job. It's trying to protect you from something that maybe made you feel emotional. It's not reading your emotion, it's just protecting you, right? And our brains can overprotect us to the point that I've had clients where it's very difficult to get to memories, in part because their brain won't let those pieces go. Psychedelics have been great for people being able to calmly come down from that piece, that heightened anxiety, so that they can actually let some of those memories release, right? And at that point, it's easier to actually help them when they're feeling self love, right? Because psychedelics, if done correctly, you're doing it in a very heightened, great state of mind. And if you're able to do it from there, you're in a great place of self love. So that's a great place for what we talked about, forgiveness of self, right? Acceptance of self and loving yourself on a very deep basis. I
Yes.
think, they're doing more and more research, and the hope is it's going to be legalized soon. And so I believe anything we can gain, right, that might help one of our clients, even if we take 30 hours of training and we help one client with something,
Yeah.
with one way to get help, right? That matters. It truly does.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Yeah, I have interviewed lots of people and I have read a lot myself.
Mhm,
And I have not really spontaneously engaged with psychedelics, but I was there was a retreat, meditation
mhm,
retreat in France, and they gave it to me. Just,
mhm.
I don't know, I didn't ask for it, but That was
Mhm.
an amazing experience.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And I remember
Absolutely.
a question about suing the meditation center for giving that to me, without any permission. I just
Right.
dropped everything because I could see so much of the inner
Right.
world.
Right. And definitely you should have permission, right? Because what do we know, especially for women, right? Consent and permission is something that should
Yes,
always be there, right? Especially in spirituality, right? Even in spirituality, we never have the right to do something, even if we think it's good for someone, right? That is against their own will at that point,
I agree. But it's
right?
interesting, Bernadette. I know that, yeah, I know, absolutely. Yes. Yeah. I interview people here too
Mm-hmm.
that were abused actually, doing the
Mm,
ceremonies and all,
yeah.
which is really
Yeah.
sad. It was not my case, but
Mm-hmm.
I remember being very grateful afterwards because I could see so much. It
Yeah.
helped me
Yeah.
a lot, yeah, with
Yes.
clarity. Do you have experiences? Have you had experience your own, or what have your experiences been with psychedelics?
I have actually used psychedelics myself, and I find the same thing. I've never had an experience go bad.
Yeah.
Alcohol, when I was younger, right?
Oh,
Alcohol has been
yeah.
something where, oh, the
Yeah.
experiences have been horrible.
Yeah.
But psychedelics, genuine psychedelics, often music festivals, right? It enhances the music. It enhances the vibe. It's not like the old stuff where, people see things and everything just feels more clear. All your senses and emotions just feel heightened. That's genuinely what I experience. I don't experience tracers and, hallucinations, things like that. Just
Right.
genuinely a heightened sense of happiness, right? A
Yeah.
clarity, a sense of connection. All of everything feels just better and clearer,
Yes. Yeah.
you know?
And do you actually recommend a type of a psychedelic? I'm not recommend. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that word. I mean, why not? For healing, we should anyway. Psilocybin or ayahuasca, is there like one that you feel it's
Yeah.
more?
I think doing mushrooms like natural mushrooms, if you can, that is absolutely the best way to go. Does that make sense? Because in the more
Yes.
natural form, too, in the most natural form you can do it, if you look at cultures that have used these things, right, they've always used them in the more naturalist of forms they can get them. There's a reason for that, right? Our problem is our world right now dictates, our country dictates what you use based on what they believe is criminal. And I understand that, right? Without a true
Yeah.
understanding of what is actually better for people, what helps people, what doesn't help people. I think we're getting closer to the other tide, which is nice, right? Because we absolutely need to realize that whatever brought us to this beautiful world, right? Put us here with everything we needed. So the fact that we're creating a lot of things that might be great to enhance them, but we should also look at what is available in the natural
Mm,
ecosystem, right? To
mhm.
help us with everything like hemp, right? To help with toilet paper and paper goods. There's so many natural things that you can use, right? That save the environment and save us as human beings.
Yes.
And that's what I think we should start with always, right? So I think as long as it's something looking at the side effects and what the concerns are for yourself would be, making sure that you do it when you're in a great mind frame because bad mindsets are going to just lead to bad situation, right? Making sure that you have people with you that you can trust. Those three things, right, are the most vital. And then it's do you want to experience? And a lot of times you can do research to find what is your experience that you're looking for based on what they tell you the experience of each one is, right?
Right.
And that's what you want to support for your client, right? Some provide more clarity, provide an ability to go back more in time. Whatever it is we're trying to help them with, we want to do that with them, at this, right?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me. I know you have been accepted. How long do you think it will be before you are able to help um, people with trauma with psychedelics? Another 2 years, 3 years?
I am actually hoping at least at the most, maybe 2 years. I know that I'm graduating in hopefully May of next year, so it's a year program, and I love that, a little less than a year. The law seems like it might be changing in our favor to allow for the use of them. I imagine, right, it's going to need to go probably to the bigger places, hospitals, settings like that. So, you know, if an opportunity arose that I might be able to do some experience, right, that way through a clinic or a hospital setting versus in my private setting, I might be willing to do that to start, just to get some experience before I'm able to do it in my private setting.
Yeah.
Might be beneficial. So I'm hoping a year or two is the most. I think we're in a good place for it.
Yeah, we are getting there. I heard it in Colorado, some states or United States, they're already working with
Yes.
it. It's already legal. Let me see. I had questions here about HSP. I think we talked about. Is there anything that we left unsaid about highly sensitive people?
Not really, other than I think every human being should just look at the HSP traits online and just see, do they resonate with them? Because you might sound like, people go, oh, I'm not sensitive. But when you
Yeah,
read some of the traits, like feeling emotions very heavy, right? Feeling your heart literally break when you get hurt, right? That's pretty heavy. Things like, having a bunch of things go right in one day and one bad thing and being focused on the one bad thing, that's an HSP trait. So a lot of times we might have them without even realizing what we're doing. That connection for a lot of my clients has been an amazing connection in of itself, to feel like they connect with others and they're not alone in how they feel things, right? Because often in our family of origin or someone in our life is telling us we're too sensitive, we're too something,
yeah.
right? And I don't think we are. I think we get it from a weird place sometimes, but I think we should be sensitive to how the world around us functions and how every human being lives, right? I think that's how we're supposed to be, and that's the connection we're losing.
Ah, right. I love that. Yes, of course, because you see, that resonates with me at the human experience level. That,
Yeah.
yeah, I heard that a lot. You're too sensitive. You're too sensitive, and it
Yes.
never made sense to me. No,
No.
this is just
No.
it's natural to me to feel these things, and
Fair, right?
yeah, like
Yes.
in the presence of violence and unkindness. I think we all should feel that way.
Yes.
Sensitive. We should be sensitive to
Yes.
that, and not the opposite, right?
Right. Right. Having that visceral reaction, right, I think is something we should have, because what happens otherwise, we become desensitized to the human
Right.
experience of another human being. And that's when we're losing our feelings, our own self conscious, right? We're losing our spirituality, we're losing our own path.
Mm. Yes. And I remember being, and then what I did was I went very deep into spirituality because that's my path.
Hmm.
And then
Yep.
I remember coming across the concept of karma. And then it
Absolutely.
kind of made me, in a way, less sensitive to the suffering of
Yes.
others because I thought,
Yes.
oh, it's because karma that they are going through this.
Hmm.
I was in
Hmm.
France. I remember seeing this woman. She was holding a dog in the park, and I was just there doing, I don't know what, meditating, I guess. And
Uh-huh.
then
Hmm.
she was sitting down with her dog. I was watching her by the lake. I was far away from her in the back. And then
Hmm.
another woman came, and then
Hmm.
started fighting with her, like
Oh,
hitting her physically.
wow.
And I remember watching, and that was when I was very deep into the karma thing. Oh,
Hmm.
it's
Hmm.
karma. Just don't pay attention to it. Don't,
Right.
And then I remember that experience changed everything, because
Yeah.
then what happened was that woman with the dog, the little dog, she came to me and said, "Help, help. Uh, please hold my," she was bleeding. She said, "Hold my
Hmm.
dog for me, please." Ah,
Right. Right.
yeah, it's interesting. It's a thing that it gets me sensitive now because
Yes.
I remember being
Absolutely.
desensitized because of
Yes.
spirituality, going to taking it
Right.
literally.
Remember what I said about how we read things, right, as an
Yes,
HSP? What we do sometimes is we find a route to make ourselves tough from the outside, and we're not tough from the outside. Karma, you have to be careful with, right? People do get karma, right? And I always say I have bad luck but good karma. So my car will break
yeah,
down, but I'll be right next to the gas station or something like that, right?
yeah.
And I think if we live as good people, right, our
Mm,
karma will help bail us out. So I don't know if you see it. Her good karma was that you were there. Don't you see that? And that you did help her. Don't you see
yeah,
that more? You were her good karma without realizing that was the lesson you needed to learn, right? Is that karma can hit people, but what we have to remember is even if karma's hitting them, they still deserve, right, the beautiful life that people deserve, right? And that we can't let them be harmed, right? Karma shouldn't cause them such physical or deep physical or emotional pain. Does that make sense? Right? Karma should teach you a lesson like it taught you. You weren't super harmed, right? You got hurt and you had to feel those emotions, but that's what it taught you, right? I
right.
tell everybody everything's either, including people, either a lesson or a blessing, right? You either
Mm,
learn something from the things and people you meet, right? Or you get something from them, even if they don't stick around forever, right?
that's it. That's
Right?
it. I learned my lesson right there and there. Yeah, that was a
Yeah,
powerful one.
yeah, yeah. So you were like halfway there. Do you see it? Like we
Yes.
understood karma, but
Yeah.
we also have to do that piece, right? Where we help other people and connect deeply with them, even in their
Right.
worst moments, right? While they learn their lessons.
Yes, that's it. Right.
Yeah,
Not disconnect from people's
correct.
anyone's suffering. Yes, of course, that was a long time ago, almost 10 years now. And that now, what I do is, part of us, it's still, I see the archetypes. It's interesting. I just interviewed somebody about archetypes, parts, and all that.
Mhm.
And I remember, I see that I do so much work on spirituality, and of course, being focused on the absolute,
Mhm.
on consciousness, pure consciousness. That's really my main practice. So I see everything as
Mhm.
God itself.
Yeah.
There's no separation between you, the microphone, everything. Everything is the manifestation of that pure
Right.
consciousness, and I know that. So,
Mhm.
but sometimes I see that's funny, like when I'm working out at the gym, sometimes with my husband, and then I see the body doing things that it doesn't really, is not really in alignment, because I get,
Mhm.
let's say, other women, there's a woman next to me, and I see they're getting a little bit uncomfortable. Perhaps,
Mhm.
perhaps it's my own mind kind of making that up, but I see something. I'm very sensitive to people's behavior and
Yes.
everything, and I'm
Yes.
trying. So anyway, um, I also feel that sometimes it's very useful to let the narrative just to play out, and
Mhm.
not try to stop
Absolutely.
and control everything. I don't try to
Right.
control.
Don't try to control everything. That's a PTSD response, honestly, right? When we try to
Yes,
control and macro control and micromanage everything, try not to
yes,
control things. Let yourself feel the emotions. What I tell my clients is emotions are on like a wheel, like a pendulum wheel, right? So for happy, there's opposite. Sad, right? There's an opposite. So here's the thing, feel that emotion, right? Don't live there. If you get jealous, feel jealous, right? If you get raged, feel raged, but don't live there. You can even feel sorry for yourself for a short time because something bad happens, but then we pick ourselves up, right? And we do the right thing by ourselves. Here's the truth. You might actually be picking up on her emotions. Maybe she's actually feeling heightened by how good you look without you even realizing that she's
yeah,
looking at you jealous and envious that you have a husband, that you're there working out. And what an HSP is going to do is pick up something coming from their direction. And now, if you're probably already a little anxious walking into something like this, because we kind of judge ourselves from other people's perspective, I call it still kind of beating ourselves up, right, through the other
yes,
perspective, even if it's not internally, right? We'll
yeah,
look at someone else and go, oh, they think I'm horrible. They think I'm ugly. They think I'm this. And the truth is, I think it's honestly just another way. Remember, I told you about getting ourselves taught to be nice and calm and nice to ourselves, right? And I think it's a way to turn that and still beat yourself up a little bit. So be cautious of that. That doesn't mean that maybe she's having a bad day and you aren't picking up the right emotion or feeling. But I want to be aware that sometimes it can be, just like you said, it might be my own sensitivity in that moment, right? Because when do we feel heightened? Oh my gosh, don't women always feel heightened when they have to walk in any
yes,
gym setting, any setting? Because we have been taught to, right? To judge ourselves for the view of what other people look like. Isn't
so
that
true.
weird? Men haven't been taught that. They're not taught to go, go look at other men and decide if they look just as good as them. But that's how women have been taught to see themselves. As soon as we start seeing ourselves as being beautiful the way we like ourselves, right? And not worrying about what others around us think,
Yeah.
right? Then we're
Mm.
good. We are good, right? If they don't pay your bills, they don't sleep in your bed, they don't get a right, and they don't live in your house, they have no right to an opinion, honestly, right? That's what I tell people. So I try to let a lot of that go because a lot of it might
Uh,
be our own anxiety, and I want us to be well aware of that. We are highly sensitive. It is a heightened thing to walk into, right? Especially, right, everybody after COVID has put on weight, it seems like. So we all feel a little heightened right now that we don't look like these movie stars and stuff because we don't have
uh,
liposuction and right all. So we have to do it at our pace, right? It doesn't always work the way, right, that it goes so fast, right? So we have to be there, right? And you're on that track, which is amazing, right? But I like that you saw for what it might be. And think about it. You could actually be picking up her feelings of feeling bad about herself, but misreading it and turning it on yourself. So it's
that's
good idea to kind of step back and watch the view because she might actually be a little jealous of what you have.
Um, yeah, I see that's an interesting perspective that we often don't think about it. But what I do as a practice, which I just recently started, really another
Hmm.
practice, is seeing people in general as kids. Especially when
Yes.
emotions like that come up, I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
God, think about anybody. Like
Right.
my own husband, when he's kind of with his own thing, getting upset about whatever it is, I kind of visualize him as a child.
Yep.
Um,
Absolutely.
I guess that helps somehow. It
Hmm.
helps with in the sense of not trying to let's say mirror that those emotions, because I have a tendency to just, if my husband's upset and then I get upset, I'm like, why am I
Mm-hmm.
getting upset? But because,
Yes.
and then I see, what if I see him as a child, then it changes, and then it feels, it's
Absolutely.
more empathetic. It's like, oh my
Yes.
God, how can I help?
You know why part of that is too? Because a lot of times when our trauma comes, what are the most important years for us, right? When we're children. When is that
Mm,
messaging getting into that trauma bucket? When we're children, right? And what do we
yeah,
know as empaths? When we're highly empathetic, right? Remember what I told you? That's why keeping your self-talk is really important too. I make people promise, right, that they won't say anything out loud or, right, in their own heads to themselves that's negative or mean, right? If they wouldn't say it to their best friend or a little kid, because what do we know about our own empathy? We know how bad it feels to be hurt as a kiddo. We would never hurt people's kids or our own kids, right? Unintentionally, ever as an empath, right? So that is one of the things, right? That you're going to stop yourself because if you wouldn't say it to a tiny little you, why would you say it to a grown you,
right, right. Oh, I
right?
love that. Yeah, I love.
Right?
See, I love that. That caught my attention off record when you mentioned that was something that you wouldn't say to the little kid, or how would you treat a pet? So I'm
Yes.
kind of
Yes.
seeing that, like treating myself as that kid, and then seeing everybody else as a kid, as a
Yes.
child. It's kind of
Oh,
fun,
yeah.
actually.
Isn't it? It's good, right?
It's
And
fun.
animals, honestly, animals do better self-care. Kids and animals do better self-care than adults, right? If kids
Yes,
want to eat, they eat, and they don't care if it's right. I want crunchy food right now. I want good food. I want sweets right now. They eat what they want to eat, right? They exercise when they want to exercise. They go outside and play when they want to play. Animals do the same thing. D3, they seek it out. We're the ones that are like, oh, I don't have time. I need to go right cook dinner. I got to go run here. And like I told you, making sure we schedule even 20 minutes to an hour a day for ourselves to do something kind for us because we're living in a world that we've never existed in before is vital to who we are as human beings and that human experience, right?
going back to it, right? Oh my God, yeah. I just have a book behind me. I don't know if you can see, probably not. Return to
Uh,
Silence. It's a
see?
beautiful. Well, it's a Zen Buddhist thing, but it's so true. Every time
Yeah.
I look at it, I walk in the room, return to silence. It
Um,
reminds me of the inner world. Reminds me of
yes.
nature.
Yes. And all of it counts on how we treat ourselves. Remember what I said that
Yeah,
self-talk's important because of
yeah.
Dr. Emoto's right
Ah, yeah.
experiments, right? What he found is we can emotionally impact water cells. And when you say nice words to water, just kind words to water, they look like crystals and snowflakes. They're opaque, they're blue, they're beautiful. When he says negative words to water, right? It's nasty. They're like greasy and waxy looking, right? They're green looking, they're weird looking, right? And think about it, we're like 70 to 80% water cells. So I think when we have friends, family, even ourselves, when we get to in one of our depressive phases and we start to feel so down, right, that we go, oh, my body feels heavy. That's the first time to ask yourself or that other person, what are you saying to yourself? How are you talking to yourself? Because my
Mm-hmm.
hunch is we're beating ourselves up through others' view, like everybody hates me, I can't move, I'm depressed, nobody wants to be my friend, or we're beating ourselves up. Oh, look at me, I'm a failure, nobody wants to be around me. Here's what I found about feelings. I used to fight my dark moments all the time, and they would take like a week or two to disappear. Right? I think people with trauma tend to have times where things get dark. Here's what I learned. If I lean into that stuff and I just accept it and I take care of myself like I have the flu, good foods, good clothes, good shows, everything, just shows I love, right? Nothing heavy. I have actually noticed my dark moods have disappeared in close to less than 24 hours the last 3 times,
Uh,
rather than a week. By instead of fighting it, just accepting that I feel moody and that I'm having a bad day, right? And it's okay because those happen even when we try the hardest to be in a good space, right?
Yeah, that's a practice that I mean everybody should engage in. The word "should" I know there's time
Mm-hmm.
for healing, but this is
Mm-hmm.
an amazing practice, right? To get closer to your feelings,
Yes,
especially the
absolutely.
uncomfortable ones. And the closer we
Absolutely.
get, the more they disappear, or
Right.
reveal something that is
Absolutely.
that means something to our hearts. That has been my experience too. Yeah, I do
Absolutely.
lean into it. Um,
Yeah.
there's something that you sent me an article. Yeah, why gardening makes you happy and cures depression. So was an article from Permaculture College, Australia.
Yes.
Something here that I read that caught my attention immediately. It said we cannot change our craving. nature, but we can't change the nature of what we crave.
Absolutely.
That's so
Right?
powerful, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes, it's all about, right, doing healthy choices versus unhealthy. Remember, a lot of our behaviors that we don't like are actually just bad coping mechanisms we picked up as children to survive something, right? What I tell people is you're still alive, you're not dead, you're not in jail, right? You're not gone so far that we can't get you back. You don't have something that can't be worked on and healed from.
Right.
That in of itself means you were so strong in those moments without even seeing it, right? People with PTSD, right, and HSP traits tend to see themselves as weak. The truth is, we are amazingly strong to be able to navigate all of that spiritual messaging, right? All of that intuitiveness, right? All of that that
Yes.
we have,
Yeah.
and find a way to navigate such a difficult world. That's pretty impressive to me, rather than less impressive, right? So I think a lot of this, right, is what do we choose to do with it? Right. It's easy to go have a drink after work, and then one drink leads to two, leads to three, leads to four, and we're right back to our heavy drinking or whatever it is that we're doing to cope and numb, right? But what you and I have learned, right, is allowing yourself to feel an emotion rather than be afraid of it. Because that fear is coming from that little kid. One of the things I always ask clients, they'll tell me, I'm so afraid to even dig in. I'm so afraid to answer that question. And I'll stop them and go, what are you afraid of right now? And the interesting part is there'll be a dead silence because they start to go, well, I don't know. And it's because that fear that's coming up, right, is that trauma in the brain because your cortex is trying to figure out, is this old trauma, new trauma? What are we talking about? And until it reads it correctly, your body's starting to think it's new trauma. So you're afraid, right? And it's reminding ourselves the stuff that happened often happened when we were little. And yeah, we were afraid. We should have been afraid. It was probably very frightening, whatever it was, right? But we don't have to be afraid now, and you have a guide to walk you back there, right? And you're so much stronger and bigger now that you would never let that little kid get hurt. So after we usually journal out like mom and dad relationships, right? Important people relationships, we often journal out, right? What we would say to them too, if we could say anything and let us purge all of that. And sometimes we actually are able to journal out what a healthy relationship might look like at the end. And people are sometimes able to reconnect in a way that even if that trauma or that bad behavior is there with that parent, it doesn't engage them anymore, which is amazing. They have peace inside, even around the difficult stuff.
Right. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that seems to be the destination and the journey at the same time.
Absolutely.
Life and
Absolutely.
peace. I love this this idea. I mean, it is one of my practices now, but the more I hear from you, the more I think that it really resonates true. Yeah, treating ourselves as a child of innocence, really,
Absolutely.
which
Yep.
innocence is a very interesting idea. The more I think about it, I remember researching, even trying to find out what is the relationship between innocence and consciousness and pure consciousness.
I think it's more too, don't you? It's innocence, it's consciousness, and it's
Mm,
wonder, right? And
yeah.
excitement, don't you think? See, that's the piece, like we were talking about earlier. We are simply a species, and we forget that. Our problems can be huge, right? Oh, they can be huge. They can be convoluted. They can be very deep, right? But the way to fix them as a species is actually very simple things. And one of the things as human beings that we've stopped doing is connecting to the planet, to ourselves, and to each other on very deep levels. Meaning, we all used to sing and dance and emote and create and experience and touch and feel.
Yes.
And
Yes.
half the time we don't do these things, right? Unless we're good at them because what? People make fun of you, right? Sometimes you're unsafe if you dance in a gas station, like something that happened recently, right? Those things, right? Play into how much we limit our own play and our own experience. And we have to stop that, right? We have to let ourselves be childlike again. We have to know what it's like to run barefoot across the grass again, right? To
Yes.
feel what it's like to splash in puddles, right? To go swimming, maybe sometimes where we're not supposed to go swimming, to go skinny dipping if we want to go skinny dipping, right? As long as we don't get in trouble, right? But to experience this life because you only get one and none of us actually knows when it's over,
Mm,
right? And
yeah.
I never want people to live with regret. To me, that's the worst thing you can take out of this, right, human experience, is to wish you felt something, wish you experienced something. Right? We're meant to experience rage and greed and shame and guilt and all of those. It's what you do with them after you feel them that matters.
Yeah. Wow, that's a beautiful message. What can I say?
Right?
What's not to love about it? Thank you so much for your beautiful
You're
wisdom,
welcome.
Bernadette.
You're welcome.
Wow, it's earthing itself, it's grounding. You are
Thank you.
grounding.
Good. Thank you. I love it.
How
I love it. I really
beautiful.
enjoyed this.
Yeah, it's truly beautiful. Let me see if I left anything. I know I made a lot of notes here, gardening. I know you mentioned about Matsuru Emoto, but I didn't have any questions really. Just wanted to see what was your view on his work. And then you mentioned water. Yeah, we are made of water. I remember I interviewed a scientist also
Hmm.
not too long ago.
Hmm.
He challenged this idea. He said, "Oh, the body's not made of it's not water because already it becomes something else as soon as we drink
Hmm.
water. The
Hmm.
liquid becomes something else, blood, different
Hmm.
fluids, and then it's no longer water anymore. But it's still liquid, right?
Right. And guess what it just did? It nourished your body, right? It's kind of why I tell people eating, sleeping, those are vital too. Making sure you're sleeping well, right? Eating well are very vital because what is the message you're sending to your body when you don't feed it properly? You're literally telling your body, I don't care enough about you to nurture you. So,
Mm,
right, even taking in that water, it changes into things. To me, that's amazing and magical, isn't it? That water cells can turn into stuff that goes into our blood and replenishes all of our body. What does that tell you? But just how connected we are to water,
mm,
right? And
yeah.
liquids, right? Because we were partially in that already. And so look at it, still gives us life, doesn't it? Like I tell people, right? The earth doesn't need us. We need it, don't we?
Mm.
The planet doesn't need us. We need this planet. We need everything in it, from the liquids and the water, right? To the sun, to the grass, all of it. We need it,
Yes, yes.
right?
Especially the part of us that has been disconnected. I would say the
Correct.
mind, mainly the mind, right? The body keeps
Absolutely.
going back to it, but the mind
Yes.
sometimes blocks it. And the interesting thing about water, something that I learned too, is that somebody called the liquid crystals. And
Hmm.
then I interview a scientist, a water scientist, she called water liquid crystals. And then I interview somebody who specializes in crystals, and she said
Hmm.
crystals are the only minerals that they are perfect. They are in harmony. They are always in
Absolutely.
perfect harmony.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I know we're close on time, but there's a frequency and a wave, right, that comes with a frequency that can be measured and a vibration with every different crystal that exists. And I know I didn't send you this stuff, but it's amazing to me. Think about it. Our bodies have crystals. Do you see the connection to this planet
Yes.
again? And crystals from outside of us, as you see, I wear a lot of them because each one has a different vibration and frequency. I don't think we know enough about it because we don't know enough about the brain, but we're learning more every day. My hope is someday we're going to figure out what do those frequencies, right, and vibrations mean. They're able to lift small objects with sound now. So we're getting there. We're getting to some points, right, where we can see things, right? I just hope people keep doing this work as generations move forward because they got to imagine it's just going to get more and more connected and better as we go.
Yes, yeah,
Don't
that's
you
the
think?
vision. That's a beautiful vision.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank
Right?
you. Thank you for that. That's
You're
exactly
welcome.
the way I feel. Wow. So I could talk to you forever, Bernadette.
I
So
love it.
I do have a few questions for you, the ending questions. Let me see. I'm
Mhm.
all over the place now. Let me see. Yes, I do have the ending questions. But before that, actually, how do you define freedom?
Loving yourself and not caring what anybody else thinks about that.
Yes, that's a great one. And what three experiences you wish everyone to have before they die, before they lose the body or leave the body?
Every human experience we're supposed to have because I think that's why we're here.
Yes.
Every emotion, every even pain, hate, rage, guilt, all of that, right? Happiness, joy, love, all of that. That's what we're here to do. Yeah.
That's freedom too. It always goes
Yeah.
back to freedom, which we essentially
Absolutely.
are as well. Ah,
Yeah.
how amazing. I did have another question. Would you go back to self-love if I asked you the
Hmm.
question about life and having one purpose? If there was one purpose only to a human experience, what would
Hmm.
that be? What comes to mind?
To live. To live just with the freedom you and I talked, the freedom to feel, the freedom to think, right? The freedom to try things, experience things. You don't have to be good at them. I had people that had stopped doing their self care techniques because they're not good at them. I'm not good at darts at all. I almost maim people. So I'm really not good at them, but I still do darts and I just try to warn the people around me, to stay out of the way and duck.
Yes.
But I still play darts. I don't have to be good at it.
Yeah.
It's fun to throw, a sharp object at a little board. So that can be fun too, right? So I think it's about making sure that we experience every single thing we want to and not let that fear, right? And that anxiety that are self created hold us back from living and loving and laughing and feeling it all, even the bad stuff, right? You don't got to live there. You just got to experience it, right?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. I love the way you brought fear into the picture, right? Being
Yep.
almost like the opposite, the impediment to the obstacle to freedom, or the feeling
Yep.
of freedom, or the
Absolutely.
experience of freedom, which it is
Absolutely.
embracing everything that's already here. Yeah,
Yep.
that's a beautiful message. Thank you so much, Bernadette, for being here.
You're welcome. Thank
Wow.
you. You too. I appreciate that. All right.
What is the best place to find more information about you? Your website?
I actually have a website. It's Bernadette Wood, lcsw.com. I also have an email, which is Tony Wood, TONIWOOD,
Yes.
0923 at att.net. Those are the two best ways to reach me.
Wonderful. I'll have that on the video interview
Perfect.
profile. Thank you so
All
much
right.
again.
Thank you so
We'll
much.
talk
Have a
soon.
good one.
You too.
Bye.
Bye for now, Ben.